The arena was alive with the usual electric hum of a Friday night SmackDown. It was a familiar rhythm, bright lights, loud pyro, the roar of thousands expecting the expected. A champion stood in the ring, microphone in hand, delivering a victory speech that felt routine. The audience was comfortable, settled into the predictable flow of the show. Then, the irregularity hit. It wasn't a planned cue. It felt like a technical failure. The massive LED screens went black. The house lights died completely. For 3 agonizing seconds, there was total, suffocating darkness. The noise of the crowd didn't immediately turn to cheers. It dropped into a confused murmur. In that pitch black, the air in the arena seemed to drop 10 degrees. A low, guttural hum began to vibrate through the stadium speakers, a sound barely audible at first. More felt in the chest than heard. It wasn't music. It was an atmospheric drone, heavy and ominous. Slowly, a thick, unnatural fog began to roll out from the entrance ramp, illuminated only by a single, pale white spotlight that flickered like a dying bulb. The champion in the ring lowered their microphone, genuine confusion washing over their face. This wasn't on the run sheet. The referee looked toward the timekeeper's area, shrugging. The unplanned nature of the moment broke the fourth wall just enough to make everyone uncomfortable. Nothing moved in that fog for a long moment. The anticipation wasn't exciting. It was heavy. It pressed down on every person in the building. They were waiting for a recognizable riff, a catchphrase, something to signal it was okay to cheer. But the silence just stretched, thick with tension, until the very air felt brittle, ready to shatter at the slightest touch of something new. From the depths of that chilling fog, a silhouette finally emerged. It didn't burst through the curtain with high energy. It moved with a terrifyingly slow, deliberate cadence. The walk was different. Gone was the energetic bounce, the connection with the fans at ringside. This figure walked a straight line, eyes fixed forward, ignoring the thousands of people surrounding her. As she stepped into the pale light, the realization hit the crowd in waves. The gasp was audible. It was her, the golden hero, who had vanished months ago without a trace. But the vibrant colors she used to wear were gone, replaced by matte black leather and torn fabrics that looked like they had survived a war. Her hair, once bright, was darkened, hanging loose over eyes that carried zero warmth. She didn't pose at the top of the ramp. She didn't acknowledge the cameras. She just walked. The drone music swelled, adding layers of discordant violins that grated on the nerves. The audience didn't know what to do. A few tried to start her old chant, but it died quickly in their throats. It felt wrong to cheer for this version of her. This wasn't a triumphant return. It felt like an omen. She reached the steel steps and slowly ascended, never breaking her gaze from the champion in the ring. The contrast was stark, the champion in bright, polished gold, and this returning force, looking like she had just crawled out of a grave. She slipped between the ropes, the movement liquid and predatory. Standing across from the champion, she didn't need a microphone. Her presence alone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The silence she commanded was heavier than any cheer she had ever received in her past life. She was back, but the hero was dead. While the arena was gripped in stunned silence, the backstage area was a frantic hive of confused activity. Producers, usually calm under pressure, were ripping headsets off, demanding to know who authorized the lighting cue. The script for the night lay forgotten on a production table, its carefully planned segments now completely derailed by this unscheduled arrival. Monitors in the gorilla position, the nerve center just behind the entrance, curtain showed the scene in the ring. Seasoned veterans who had seen everything in this business stood transfixed. They weren't watching a performance. They were watching a stranger wearing a familiar face. One producer, a legend in his own right, just whispered, "She actually did it. She killed the old character completely." The chaos was genuine because the intensity she brought wasn't something you could rehearse. The writers were already scrambling, realizing their next 3 months of storylines just evaporated the moment she stepped through that fog. They had wanted a return, yes, but they expected a pop, a smile, a wave to the crowd. They didn't expect this void of emotion. Camera operators were given frantic new instructions in their earpieces. Stay tight on her eyes. Do not go wide. Capture the coldness. They needed to sell this new reality immediately. The confusion backstage only added to the realism on screen. The commentators, usually fed lines to hype a moment, were left momentarily speechless, their genuine shock bleeding through the broadcast. It was a rare moment in modern wrestling where the orchestrated control fractured. She hadn't just returned to the show, she had hijacked it. The anxiety among the crew was palpably, was this going too far? Was it too dark for their usual demographic? Nobody had the answer. They just knew they couldn't look away. In the locker room, the atmosphere had shifted from casual camaraderie to intense, quiet focus. Superstars huddled around the monitors, towels forgotten over shoulders. These were people who knew her, they had traveled with her, shared rental cars, celebrated birthdays. They recognized the person on the screen, but they didn't recognize the energy she was projecting. The younger talent, who had looked up to her previous inspirational persona, felt a genuine sense of betrayal. Their hero had abandoned the light. They whispered nervously, wondering if this meant their own spots on the card were now in jeopardy. This new version of her looked like she wouldn't just beat opponents. She would dismantle them to make a point. The established veterans, however, saw something else. They saw the toll of the business etched on her face. They understood that this darkness wasn't just a costume change. It was armor. One seasoned veteran murmured to the group, "She stopped trying to please them. That makes her the most dangerous person in this building right now." There was a collective realization that the ecosystem of the women's division had just been violently disrupted. Everyone would have to adapt. The comfortable hierarchies were gone. If she was willing to destroy her own lovable image so completely, what was she willing to do to the rest of them? The champion in the ring, still frozen on the monitor, represented all of them exposed and suddenly unprepared. The locker room knew that when that segment ended, the person walking back through that curtain wasn't going to be the friend they remembered. She was now the competition in a way she never was before. The lines between performance and reality had just blurred dangerously for everyone. Before the commercial break even hit, social media had dissolved into absolute chaos. Her name was trending #1 globally within 4 minutes of her music hitting. The timeline was a fractured mirror of reactions: shock, fear, excitement, and anger. Fans were uploading reaction videos of themselves just staring blankly at their TVs, unable to process the sudden shift in tone. The fan art that usually portrayed her in bright superhero colors was immediately replaced by hastily drawn sketches of her new silhouette in charcoal and black ink. The visual rebrand was instantaneous and organic. Forums were alight with theories. Was she brainwashed? Was this a reaction to her last big loss? Every tiny detail of her new entrance was dissected frame by frame. Did you see she didn't blink? Not once in the whole walk down the ramp. One viral post read, "The terrifying stillness of her demeanor was more effective than any violent outburst could have been." The lack of immediate answers fueled the fire. Because she hadn't spoken, hadn't explained herself, the audience had to fill in the gaps with their own anxieties. They were doing the storytelling for her, building her up into a mythical monster before she had even thrown a single punch. It was a viral moment that transcended standard wrestling viewership. People who hadn't watched in years were tagging friends asking, "Is this real? What happened to her?" The darkness had a gravitational pull that pure athleticism never could. It was morbid curiosity weaponized into perfect marketing. The confusion didn't drive people away. It glued them to the screen, desperate to see what this new, volatile element would do next. The most compelling part of the story wasn't what was happening now, but the void that preceded it. Her months away had been totally silent. No social media posts, no leaked photos, no interviews. In an era of constant oversharing, her total disappearance had been an anomaly. Now it looked like masterful long-term storytelling. Media outlets began speculating wildly about her time away. Had she gone to some secluded place to reinvent herself? The narrative began to form that something happened to her during that breaks, something that broke her faith in being the good guy. This mystery added a layer of tragedy to her dark return. Fans remembered her tearful goodbye when she left, promising to come back better for them. They realized now, with a creeping sense of horror, that she did come back better, but only for herself, not for them. The commentary team, finally finding their voices, started weaving this thread into the broadcast. Where has she been? What did she endure to turn her heart this cold? They asked, their voices hushed. They weren't just calling a match anymore. They were narrating a psychological thriller. The absence had created a blank canvas, and she had painted it black before anyone realized what she was doing. It made the current moment feel earned, not just like a cheap shock tactic. The weight of those missing months hung over her like a shroud. Every silent stare felt loaded with unsaid trauma and unresolved anger. The audience wasn't just watching a character change. They felt like they were witnessing the result of a genuine human breaking point translated into theater. An hour later, that night, the arena had emptied, but the heaviness of her return lingered in the quiet hallways. She sat alone in a small dressing room, still in her gear. The door was closed, clear sign to everyone that the usual post-show socializing was over. In the cracked mirror of the dressing room, she stared at her own reflection. The dark makeup around her eyes felt heavy, like physical weights dragging down her expression. This wasn't just a role she could easily wash off in the shower anymore. To make them believe it out there, she had to let a part of it live inside her. She thought about the children in the front row who used to wear her brightly colored t-shirts. Tonight, she had seen them shrink back into their parents' arms when she walked past the barricade. It was a necessary sacrifice, a sharp pang of guilt that she quickly buried under the new, cold exterior she had built. Winning their love had been exhausting. Demanding their fear was surprisingly freeing. But the isolation was immediate. Her phone buzzed with text messages from friends and family, concerned messages asking if she was okay, why she looked so angry. She didn't answer them. To maintain the aura, she had to cut the ties that kept her tethered to her old self. She was now a prisoner of her own creation. The armor she built to protect herself from the pressure of being a hero was now trapping her inside. It was quieter this way, safer, but incredibly lonely. She took a deep breath, the first sign of human emotion all night, before stealing her gaze back into the icy stare of her new persona. The truth was, being the hero had slowly drained her. The constant smiling, the pressure to be a role model, the endless media appearances where she had to be on all the time, it had left her hollow. The fans demanded more and more light from her until she had none left for herself. This dark turn wasn't evil. It was exhaustion manifested. She couldn't keep setting herself on fire just to keep the audience warm. The dark force the commentary team described was just her unfiltered reality, someone who had stopped pretending that everything was okay. She remembered the moment she decided to change. It wasn't a boardroom decision. It was waking up one morning and realizing she couldn't put on the colorful gear again without feeling like a fraud. The darkness was, ironically, the most honest thing she had ever given them. Now, she didn't have to smile when she didn't want to. She didn't have to shake hands at the airport at 3 a.m. She could just be, and if that existence was terrifying to others, then so be it. The burden of the light was that it required constant fuel. Darkness just existed. It needed nothing. It was self-sustaining. As she packed her bag, moving with the same deliberate slowness she used in the ring, she felt a strange sense of peace. They thought she was lost, but for the first time in years, she felt found. She had traded adoration for autonomy, and the heavy price felt worth it. The following weeks proved that the entrance wasn't just a one-night shock, it was the new normal. She refused to do in-ring promos. When handed a microphone by a terrified interviewer, she simply dropped it and walked away. Her matches changed drastically. Gone were the flashy, high-flying moves that popped the crowd. Her style became grounded, brutal, and efficient. She didn't wrestle to entertain. She wrestled to end the match as quickly as possible. She would lock in submissions and refuse to break them immediately after the bell, needing referees to physically pull her off. Each time she did this, the boos got louder, but so did the rapt attention. The audience realized they weren't watching a sporting contest anymore. They were watching an assault. She was dismantling the roster systematically, showing them that their fighting spirit meant nothing against raw, uncaring aggression. She didn't cheat. She didn't need outside interference. That was the scariest part. She was winning cleanly, just brutally. It made her undeniable. The other villains in the company looked like cartoon characters compared to her grounded, realistic menace. She became a void in the center of the Showa black hole that pulled every storyline toward it. Champions who used to beg for main event spots now silently hoped they wouldn't be paired with her. She had successfully changed the entire temperature of the brand without saying a single word. The twist wasn't that she had turned evil. The twist was that the audience eventually realized they liked her better this way. In a world of overproduced, shiny superstars desperately begging for likes and approval, her utter indifference to their opinion made her the coolest person in the arena. Slowly, the boos began to morph. They didn't return to the happy cheers of before, but changed into a low, respectful roar of approval. They respected the authenticity of her darkness. They realized that this wasn't a villain turn. It was a maturation. She had held up a mirror to the industry, showing that sometimes, to survive in a world of wolves, you have to become the monster they all fear. She hadn't been corrupted by darkness. She had mastered it. Standing in the ring months later, holding the championship she had violently taken, the fog rolled in again. But this time, the crowd didn't sit in awkward silence. They stood, raising their fists in solidarity with the darkness. She hadn't just returned as a dark force. She had taught them that sometimes the hero we need isn't the one in bright colors who saves the day with a smile. Sometimes the hero we need is the one who survives the night and is honest about the scars it left behind. She was back, terrifying and scarred, and she had never been more beloved.